It was January 14th, 1987. The wind howled across the frozen highways of northern Wyoming. Snow fell in heavy sheets, coating every sign, every mile, every trace of movement. On Highway 16, 30 miles from the nearest town, a small red neon sign flickered in the dark. It read, "Red Pines Motel." That night, 3 strangers checked in. The motel's owner, Helen Creighton, had been keeping the place alone since her husband's death. She remembered the faces clearly, 2 men and 1 woman. They looked tired, cold, but calm. Travelers, she thought. The taller man signed the ledger, James Elroy, Denver. The woman's name, Margaret Lewis. The second man didn't write his name at all. He just smiled, dropped a $20 bill, and said, "We won't be long." Room 7 was at the far end, the one that faced the trees. Helen gave them an extra blanket, told them the coffee was free until midnight. She watched through the frosted window as the trio carried their bags in. Then the light in room 7 went on. By 11 p.m., the storm had worsened. The highway disappeared beneath the snow. No cars passed, no radio signals came through. The motel was alone with the wind. At 12:45, Helen walked the hallway to check on the heaters. When she reached room 7, she paused. The door was slightly open. Inside, the television was on, static and flicker, but the beds were empty. The coffee pot hissed on the counter, 3 cups, all half full. Helen called out. No one answered. Their coats were still hanging, their car keys still on the table. But the door to the outside, the back door leading to the forest, was wide open. She stepped outside into the blinding snow. There were footprints, leading a few feet away from the door and then stopping suddenly, mid-stride, as if the people had simply vanished. Helen's hands shook as she went back inside. She locked the door, unplugged the television, and turned to leave the room. Then she saw this, written across the fogged window in a single word: "Wait." She called the sheriff's office, but the line was dead. The storm had taken down the wires. By morning, the snow was waist deep and the highway was closed. Helen was trapped inside the motel, alone. Or, at least, she thought she was. That was the last night anyone ever saw the guests of room 7 alive. Morning came gray and silent. The snow had buried everything. The cars, the road, even the motel sign. Inside, Helen Creighton sat by the phone, waiting for a dial tone that never came. At 9:30, a county snowplow finally reached Red Pines Motel. Behind it came a police cruiser from Sheridan County. Deputy Mark Ellis stepped out, rubbing his hands against the cold. He'd handled missing persons before, but never in a storm like this. Helen met him at the door, pale and trembling. "They checked in last night," she said. 2 men, 1 woman. They're just gone." Ellis looked around the lobby. Neat, old-fashioned, with the smell of dust and coffee. Everything seemed frozen in time. He followed Helen down the narrow hall to room 7. The door still hung open, snow drifting in across the carpet. He stepped inside, scanning slowly from floor to ceiling. No blood, no struggle, no sign of a fight. On the table, 3 cups, half full of cold coffee. A newspaper dated January 13th. And the word on the window, faint now, but still visible in the light: "Wait." Ellis crouched near the doorframe and found a set of keys on the floor. Ford Ltd., Colorado plates. But there was no car outside. He asked Helen again, carefully this time. "You're sure they didn't leave during the night?" "I would have heard them," she said. "The floor creaks when you walk. I didn't sleep at all." Ellis made notes in his pad, then radioed dispatch. Static only. He'd have to drive 5 miles out before the signal came back. So he left 1 officer with Helen and promised to return before dark. At the sheriff's office, he filed the report. Three missing adults, last seen at Red Pines Motel, Wyoming Route 16. No physical evidence, possible snowstorm disorientation. But something about the handwriting on the registry bothered him. He showed it to another deputy. "Look here," Ellis said, "the name James Elroy. It's written in two different inks." Back at the motel, the storm returned by dusk. The officer stationed with Helen swore he heard footsteps above them, though there was no second floor. Later, the lobby clock stopped at exactly 11:47 p.m. Helen said she smelled coffee again, though none had been brewed. By morning, Ellis came back. He walked the perimeter, following what little was left of the footprints. They ended abruptly near the tree line, and there, something metallic gleamed under the snow. It was a torn map sleeve, soaked and frozen stiff. Inside, a single folded paper, a state map of Wyoming, with one highway circled in red. Highway 26. Ellis frowned. Highway 26 had been closed for months. The bridge collapse near Wind River made it impassable. So why would they have circled it? He tucked the map into an evidence bag and looked once more at the forest beyond the motel. The wind whispered through the pines like a voice trying to speak. He turned back to Helen. "If they were headed for Highway 26, he said softly, then they were going the wrong way." That night, as Ellis drove away, the motel lights flickered behind him, twice, then went dark. He didn't see the word on the window fade completely until the next morning's sun hit the glass. By then, the word "wait" was gone, but something new had appeared beneath it, drawn in the frost. "Don't." Ellis crouched near the doorframe and found a set of keys on the floor. Ford Ltd, Colorado plates. But there was no car outside. He asked Helen again, carefully this time, "You're sure they didn't leave during the night?" "I would have heard them," she said. "The floor creaks when you walk. I didn't sleep at all." Ellis made notes in his pad, then radioed dispatch. Static only. He'd have to drive 5 miles out before the signal came back. So he left one officer with Helen and promised to return before dark. At the sheriff's office, he filed the report. 3 missing adults, last seen at Red Pines Motel, Wyoming Route 16. No physical evidence, possible snowstorm disorientation. But something about the handwriting on the registry bothered him. He showed it to another deputy. "Look here," Ellis said, "the name James Elroy. It's written in 2 different inks." Back at the motel, the storm returned by dusk. The officer stationed with Helen swore he heard footsteps above them, though there was no second floor. Later, the lobby clock stopped at exactly 11:47 p.m. Helen said she smelled coffee again, though none had been brewed. By morning, Ellis came back. He walked the perimeter, following what little was left of the footprints. They ended abruptly near the tree line, and there, something metallic gleamed under the snow. It was a torn map sleeve, soaked and frozen stiff. Inside, a single folded paper, a state map of Wyoming, with one highway circled in red. Highway 26. Ellis frowned. Highway 26 had been closed for months. The bridge collapse near Wind River made it impassable. So why would they have circled it? He tucked the map into an evidence bag and looked once more at the forest beyond the motel. The wind whispered through the pines like a voice trying to speak. He turned back to Helen. "If they were headed for Highway 26, he said softly, then they were going the wrong way." That night, as Ellis drove away, the motel lights flickered behind him, twice, then went dark. He didn't see the word on the window fade completely until the next morning's sun hit the pass. By then, the word "wait" was gone, but something new had appeared beneath it, drawn in the frost. "Don't." 2 days after the disappearance, the storm began to fade, but the cold stayed, sharp, dry, and silent. Deputy Mark Ellis gathered a small team from the county search unit. Their mission? To follow any path leading away from the Red Pines Motel. The road was buried in snow, barely visible beneath the white layers. Their trucks moved slow, tires spinning in slush and ice. Ellis sat in the passenger seat, staring at the highway marker ahead. It read, Route 16, closed beyond mile 74. "That's about 5 miles north of the motel," one of the officers said. Ellis nodded. That's where they went. They stopped at the edge of the closure, climbed out, and continued on foot. The forest was silent, except for the wind and the crunch of boots. Half a mile in, they found something strange. A dented thermos half buried in the snow. It matched the kind sold at Red Pines Motel gift counter. Inside, there was still coffee, frozen solid but untouched. Ellis marked the spot with a red flag and took a photograph. Then they moved deeper into the woods, following faint impressions. Tire tracks maybe, long since softened by the storm. But the tracks didn't lead forward. They curved slowly, impossibly, turning back toward the motel. Ellis frowned. "That's not possible," he said quietly. "The terrain doesn't loop here. There's no road for that." One of the men pointed ahead. "Then what's that?" Through the mist, they saw it, the faint outline of a wooden sign buried to its frame. Ellis brushed off the snow. The letters beneath the frost spelled, Red Pines Motel, 1 mile ahead. He stared, speechless. They had been walking away from the motel, not toward it, and yet here was the same sign facing the wrong direction. For a long moment, no one spoke. The snow began again, soft and heavy. Ellis took a slow breath. "Mark this location. We'll come back with mapping gear." But the GPS units failed. No signal, no coordinates, just static. They turned back before sunset. Halfway to the trucks, one of the officers stopped suddenly. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. From far off, through the storm, came a faint humming sound, mechanical, low, rhythmic, like an engine idling far beneath the snow. Ellis raised his flashlight, sweeping across the white expanse. For a brief second, the beam caught something metallic, the edge of a chrome bumper, buried deep. They dug with gloved hands, clearing just enough to reveal part of a license plate. Colorado tags, Ford Ltd. "We've got it," Ellis said, his voice breaking through the radio static. But before they could dig further, a fresh gust of snow swept down the ridge, erasing everything. By the time they uncovered the spot again, the chrome had vanished. There was only snow, flat, untouched. They marked the area again and returned to the motel just after dark. Helen met them at the door, pale and quiet. "You found their car?" she asked. Ellis hesitated. "We found something, then it was gone." Helen looked at him for a long time before whispering, "That's how it starts." Ellis frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned toward the hallway, her voice trembling. "The first winter I opened this place, a trucker stayed here. He left before dawn. They found his rig frozen into the highway ice 2 weeks later, with the engine still running." Ellis didn't reply. He just watched the snow fall harder outside the window, covering the road like a white curtain. Somewhere out there, beyond the forest, the storm was hiding something, and it wasn't done yet. Snow still covered the motel roof like a white shroud. Inside, Helen Creighton moved slowly through the quiet lobby, dusting the counter as if routine could keep her calm. She had owned the Red Pines Motel for 12 years, since the day her husband vanished on the same highway. That morning, Sheriff Dale Horner drove in from town to speak with her. He was an old friend of Helen's husband, back when the place first opened. He looked around the dim lobby and said softly, "You should have sold this place years ago, Helen." She smiled weakly. "The motel's all I have left." They sat near the heater, the sound of wind pressing against the windows. Horner asked about the night of the disappearance, the guests, their car, every detail. Helen told him everything, but her voice trembled when she reached the part about the window. "The word 'wait,'" she said. "I didn't write it." The sheriff leaned forward. Then who did? Helen shook her head. There was no one else there. Silence settled between them, thick and uncomfortable. After the sheriff left, Helen went down to the storage room behind the office, a place she rarely entered. Boxes of old records, guest ledgers, and photographs lined the walls. She pulled one box labeled 1980-1985. Inside were dozens of registration cards, but some had been torn in half. One name repeated itself every few months: Daniel Creighton, Denver, her husband's name. But he'd been dead since 1975. Helen's hands shook as she realized the handwriting wasn't his, it was hers. That night, Ellis returned to check on her. He found Helen in the lobby, staring at the fireplace, though no fire burned there. "You said you've run this place alone," he began, "but records show 3 missing drivers between 81 and 83, all last seen here." Helen didn't look up. "They were travelers. Storms take people here." "Storms don't erase license plates," Ellis replied. He showed her a photo of the Ford Ltd's plate taken before the blizzard covered it again. Her face drained of color. "That's the same plate my husband's car had." Ellis studied her closely. "When was the last time you saw him?" 1975, she whispered. "He drove north during a storm. Said he needed to check the signs on Route 16. He never came back." Ellis leaned back. The road again. That night, she dreamed of the snow-covered highway stretching into darkness, with her husband standing beside a car buried to its windows. He raised his hand and wrote something on the fogged glass. "Wait." She woke up crying before dawn. When Ellis returned in the morning, Helen was already outside, shoveling the path to the forest road. "You should rest," he said. She shook her head. "If they took the old road, there's something I need to show you." She led him through the trees to a rusted signpost half buried in snow. The letters barely visible. Highway 26 Detour, temporary route. Ellis frowned. This was never on record. Helen nodded slowly. It was built after the collapse, but they closed it a year later. Too many accidents. People kept losing their way. She looked at him with wide eyes. "Every one of them checked in here first." Ellis took a deep breath. "Maybe it's time we find that detour." Helen hesitated, then nodded. "I'll come with you." He shook his head. "It's not safe." She gave a sad smile. "It was never safe, but it's mine." As they walked back toward the motel, a distant rumble echoed through the trees, low and steady, like an engine idling under ice. Ellis looked at Helen. She nodded slowly. "It's been waiting for years." The sound grew louder, closer, until the ground beneath them vibrated. Then, as suddenly as it came, it stopped. Only the snow moved, falling softly over their boots. 10 years passed before anyone found the car again. Winter had returned to Wyoming, heavy, relentless, unmerciful. Construction crews clearing a new section of Highway 16 uncovered something metallic beneath the ice. It was a vehicle, frozen solid into the earth, its frame wrapped in white like bone. Deputy Mark Ellis was long retired when he got the call. He drove back through the same valley he once searched, the pines older, the roads straighter, but the silence the same. When he arrived, men with shovels stood in a wide circle around a half-buried Ford Ltd. Colorado plates, same number as before. The windshield had caved in. Frost sealed the doors. Inside, they found 3 skeletal figures, one in the driver's seat, 2 in the back. No wallets, no IDs, only a motel key tag hanging from the rearview mirror. Room 7, Red Pines Motel. Forensics took weeks. The bones were clean, untouched by animals, preserved by the cold. When the DNA results arrived, Ellis stared at the page for a long time. One match was clear: James Elroy, missing since 1987. Another, Margaret Lewis. But the third name made his hands tremble: Helen Creighton. It couldn't be. He'd seen her after the disappearances, spoken to her, shared coffee, listened to her story. She was alive for years after that winter. Yet the bones told another truth. Ellis drove back to the ruins of the motel. The building had collapsed years ago. Roof caved in, windows broken, vines growing through the lobby floor. He stepped inside, flashlight beam catching fragments of signs, chairs, and old keys still hanging on the wall. Room 7 was gone, only a frame left, and on the cracked glass of the front desk window, frost had formed a single word: wait. He sat on a fallen beam, breath fogging the air. "Helen," he whispered, "who did I speak to?" The wind moved through the hallway like footsteps. Somewhere, a door creaked, slow, rhythmic, as if answering. Later that week, Ellis visited the county archive. He asked for any records of Helen Creighton after 1987. Utility bills, property taxes, bank accounts. There were none. Her signature stopped that winter. Yet someone kept paying for the motel's power until 1992. The name on the account, D. Creighton, her late husband. At home that night, Ellis poured himself a drink and stared at the evidence bag on his table. Inside lay a small item found in the car's glove box, a rusted photograph of a younger Helen standing beside a man in front of the motel sign. Behind them, faint but visible, the word "wait" had already been etched into the glass of the lobby door. Ellis set the picture down, hands trembling. "Maybe she never left," he said quietly. Outside, wind scraped against his window pane. 3 long strokes, then 1 short, just like the letters on the glass. The next morning, workers at the dig site reported something strange. The Ford LTD was gone. No tracks, no drag marks, just an empty pit filled with fresh snow, as if the storm had come back to reclaim its own. 3 days after the Ford disappeared, workers at the site made another discovery. One of them, a young man named Harris, had been clearing snow near the pit when his shovel hit something soft. He bent down, brushed away the ice, and lifted out a leather notebook, frozen stiff, edges blackened with age. Inside, the first few pages were ruined by water, but halfway through, the words were still clear. Ellis arrived within the hour. He slipped on gloves and opened the notebook carefully, letting the light fall across the writing. The handwriting was delicate, feminine, Helen Creighton's. Each page was dated January 12, 13, 14. The last entry ended abruptly on the 15th. It read, "The guests are gone. The road hums at night. It sounds like a train under the snow." Then, at the very bottom of the page, a single line in darker ink. "It wasn't the storm that took us, it was the road that moved." Ellis stared at the words for a long time. They made no sense, and yet something about them felt familiar. He turned to the back of the notebook and found a small map taped inside. A crude drawing, the highway, the motel, and a thin red line branching off into the forest. The red line ended with a circle and a word written beside it: bridge. He took the map to the county surveyor's office. The old man there squinted through his glasses and frowned. "There was a bridge once," he said. "Collapsed in '86. We sealed off the old road right after." Ellis leaned forward. "Anyone live near it?" "Nobody now," the surveyor said. "The valley flooded after the thaw." That night, Ellis couldn't sleep. The phrase kept circling in his mind. It was the road that moved. He spread out county maps across his desk, comparing the old routes with new ones. And that's when he saw it, a small inconsistency. The section labeled Temporary Route 26 didn't exist anymore, not even as a dirt path. It had been erased from every record, as if it was never there. Outside, snow began to fall again, thin, whispering flakes drifting past his window. He turned off the lamp and watched the darkness shift, thinking he saw the faint reflection of headlights moving across the glass. But when he looked, the street was empty. Only the hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, a low, rhythmic sound, almost like an idling motor. The next morning, Ellis returned to the motel ruins. The sun glared off the snow, bright and colorless. He stood where the lobby once was, holding the notebook. Wind swept through the broken windows, scattering ashes from an old fireplace. One page of the notebook tore loose and fluttered into the air, catching against the wall. He stepped closer and froze. In the frost on the glass, faint letters formed again, as if written from the other side. The bridge. Ellis whispered, "Helen, what did you find?" The wind answered, low and hollow, carrying the sound of distant water, or perhaps a distant engine, far below the ice. He folded the map, slipped it into his coat, and looked toward the north ridge where the forest thickened. "The road that moved," he said softly. "Then, let's see where it went." By dawn, the storm had cleared, leaving behind a pale, empty sky. Mark Ellis packed a thermos of coffee, the old notebook, and the map marked Bridge. He told no one where he was going. Some journeys, he thought, are meant to be taken alone. The forest road wound north for miles, twisting between black pines and frozen rivers. He passed the old county markers, rusted signs, and the remains of snowplow barriers. But after mile 74, the road simply ended, buried beneath untouched snow. According to the map, this was where the missing mile began. He stepped out of the truck, boots sinking deep into the white silence. The air was still, unnaturally so, as if the forest were holding its breath. Then, faintly, he heard it again, the humming. That low, metallic sound, steady and patient, like an engine idling beneath the world. He followed the sound through the trees, compass trembling in his hand. The needle spun, once, twice, then stopped pointing backward. He turned, and the highway behind him was gone. Only snow, stretching into endless white. "Helen," he whispered, "what did you find here?" His breath fogged the air, vanishing as quickly as the footprints behind him. Every step forward felt heavier, slower, as though gravity itself thickened around him. Then he saw it, faint headlights ahead, glowing through the mist. He walked closer, and there it was, the Ford LTD, half buried, its lights flickering weakly. Inside, figures sat frozen in silence. But they weren't bones this time. They looked alive, motionless, eyes open, staring through the glass. Helen Creighton sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel. Ellis called out, "Helen!" No answer. He touched the door handle, warm. He pulled it open slowly, the hinges groaning like a sigh. Inside, the air was still, smelling faintly of coffee and frost. On the passenger seat lay a folded note, new paper, dry and untouched by time. He opened it carefully. One line, written in the same hand as before. "If you found this place, you were never meant to leave." He looked back at Helen, her lips moving faintly, almost imperceptibly. Then a whisper, low and clear, came from her, though her mouth barely moved. "The road remembers." Her eyes shifted toward the windshield. Outside, snow began to fall again, but upward, drifting toward the sky instead of down. The hum deepened, vibrating through the metal, through the ground, through him. The headlights flickered, and suddenly everything was light, pure, white, endless light. Then silence. When Ellis opened his eyes, he was standing on the highway again. The forest behind him was gone, the snow undisturbed, no tracks, no car, only the old bridge sign ahead, half buried in the frost. He looked down at his hands. The notebook was gone, but a small scrap of paper clung to his glove, frozen in place. He peeled it away and read the faint words, "Mile 75." He turned toward the empty road, the wind whispering softly through the trees. Somewhere far away, beneath the earth, an engine started, slow, patient, familiar. And for the first time, Ellis felt certain the road wasn't ending.
It was waiting.
2 weeks later, the Sheridan County Dispatch Center received a weak radio signal. It came through the emergency band, one that hadn't been used since 1987. The voice was faint, buried under static, but recognizable. It was Mark Ellis. "This is Deputy Ellis, badge 742, he said, his voice trembling. "If anyone's hearing this, I'm somewhere off Route 16, maybe near the old bridge." He coughed, the sound thin and distant. "The coordinates don't make sense. The compass spins. The road isn't where it should be." Static filled the line for several seconds. Then his voice returned. "I found them. All of them. The car, the guests, Helen." His tone shifted, quieter, almost tender. "She's not what I thought. She didn't run the motel. The motel ran her." Another pause, breathing, wind, something faintly mechanical in the background. "There's a light under the ice," he said, "bright, humming. The road keeps moving, even when I close my eyes." He sounded tired now, distant. "It's not snow, it's ash. It's memory." The signal crackled, broke, and then returned, clearer for a moment. "To whoever finds this," Ellis whispered, "don't look for the Red Pines Motel. It doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it never did." His voice trembled. "But if you ever drive north and the air feels too quiet, if you see a mile marker that doesn't match your map, turn around." The dispatcher's log recorded one final phrase before the signal ended. Ellis's voice barely above a breath. "The road remembers us all." Then silence. No location, no recovery. The call lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Static continued for another hour until it faded completely, replaced by the soft hum of an empty channel. In the years that followed, truckers driving through the Wind River Pass began reporting strange interference on their CB radios. Sometimes, just before a storm, they'd hear a voice through the static. Calm, steady, familiar. "This is Deputy Ellis, Route 16. Do you copy?" No one ever answered. But those who stayed on the line long enough said they could hear something faint behind the voice, a slow hum, like an engine buried under snow. And once, a driver swore he heard a woman whisper through the static, "Wait." They say if you drive far enough north on a winter night, there's a stretch of road not found on any map. No lights, no signs, only snow and the echo of a long-forgotten transmission. Some call it the missing mile. Others call it something else. But if you ever hear a voice through the static saying your name, keep driving. Don't look back, because the road never forgets.